Originally, I had a different idea for the direction this presentation was going to take, but then I realized one of the most iconic villains of our generation is a prime example of the Lucifer effect, and that is Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader. This past weekend, his actor David Prowse passed away, so I thought it would only be right to make my presentation Star Wars themed. I apologize for the lack of intro music to go along with this, but I was worried about copyright issues. The Lucifer effect, in short, is the psychology of evil. So, Philip Zimbardo is a theorist for the Lucifer effect. Zimbardo is an American psychologist and was a professor at Stanford University, where he conducted a well-known study called the Stanford Prison Experiment in 1971. I'll talk more on that later in the presentation. He's from New York and was born March 23, 1933, so he's currently 87 years old. He has taught at a number of universities aside from Stanford, including Yale, Columbia, and NYU. Zimbardo received both his master's and PhD from Yale University, and in 2007 published his book, The Lucifer Effect, that was written in response to the findings of the Stanford Prison Experiment. One of Zimbardo's quotes is, "The line between good and evil is permeable, and almost anyone can be induced to cross it when pressured by situational forces." This quote by him directly speaks on one of the main points behind the Lucifer effect. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, defines the Lucifer effect as the tendency for iniquitous social contexts to negatively influence and transform human behavior, in some cases to an extreme degree. This definition sounds pretty similar to the quote by Zimbardo I just read you. The Lucifer effect got its name from the story of Lucifer. He was God's favorite angel, but he defied God's authority and became evil, then being known as the devil. Zimbardo's book discusses how and why good people turn evil. The question Zimbardo raises is, how is it possible for ordinary, average, even good people to become perpetrators of evil? All humans, no matter how good, how pure, how nice, can commit malicious acts under certain sets of circumstances. I believe the theory was popularized in 2007 when Zimbardo wrote his book and named it after his theory. Because the book was written as a response to the findings of the experiment conducted in 1971, I don't believe it was used or popularized back then, but developed whilst examining the results of the study. Zimbardo, during a TED Talk, discusses how psychologists understand the evil transformations of character that people go through with the Lucifer effect. He states there are three ways, and the main way is dispositional. They look at what is inside the person, the bad apples he calls it. Second way is situational, or the external factors around the individual, what he calls the bad barrel. The third way is systemic, the bad barrel makers. Zimbardo says the system creates a situation that corrupts the individuals. The Lucifer effect is understanding human character transformation with these three factors. In Zimbardo's book, he lists steps that have been shown to induce evil behavior in people. This list is based off the Milgram experiment, which occurred in 1963, and it examines the justifications of those accused of genocide in the World War II Nuremberg war criminal trials. Here are the 10 steps that induce evil. This list gives us a look at the certain circumstances that one can be exposed to that eventually may lead to their behavior shifting to a more malevolent version of themselves. During his TED Talk, Zimbardo provided us with another list where he states the 7 social processes that grease the slippery slope of evil. Those 7 processes are as follows: mindlessly taking the first small step, dehumanization of others, de-individuation of self, diffusion of personal responsibility, blind obedience to authority, uncritical conformity to group norms, and passive tolerance of evil through inaction or indifference. You turn to evil when, quote, in a new or unfamiliar situation, your habitual response patterns don't work, and your personality and morality are disengaged. Those 7 steps lead to moral disengagement. If you're interested in watching this TED Talk, it is on YouTube and called The Psychology of Evil, Philip Zimbardo. I'll have it linked in the description. The Stanford Prison Experiment was a study done in 1971 where a simulated prison was created at Stanford University. The experiment was run by Philip Zimbardo after he received a grant from the U.S. Office of Naval Research. The participants in the study were college students randomly assigned to either be a prison guard or a prisoner by the flip of a coin. According to Zimbardo's book website, he states the experiment consisted of randomly assigned healthy, normal, intelligent college students to play the roles of prison or guard in a projected 2-week-long study. He said, "I was forced to terminate the study after only 6 days because it went out of control. Pacifists were becoming sadistic guards, and normal kids were breaking down emotionally." The APA talks about the Stanford prison experiment, saying, "A variety of methods and situations were used to depersonalize participants, diminish their sense of identity, and increase a sense of power on the one hand, guards, and powerlessness on the other, prisoners." It illustrated the manner in which social contexts can influence and transform human behavior, often in very negative ways, or in other words, the Lucifer effect. The Lucifer effect and the Stanford prison experiment relate back to personality psychology through behavior. Zimbardo said it himself, "Your personality and morals get disengaged. There's so much change in behavior and change in normal personalities of the people whose self transforms." The prisoners in the experiment began to lose their everyday personalities and conform to their roles very quickly. Applying the Lucifer effect to modern day. If you can remember, at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned how Anakin Skywalker, or Darth Vader, from Star Wars was a perfect example of the Lucifer effect taking place. To understand why, we need to take a look at Anakin's circumstances. Anakin was on the path to becoming a Jedi, but was presented with a new situation, a new set of circumstances, when he was informed that, if he joins the dark side, he can be taught how to prevent the death of others, and for his purposes, to prevent the death of his wife. These new circumstances Anakin was introduced to began to influence the transformation of his behavior, to behavior that is evil. Anakin went from a curious, somewhat defiant student to a full-fledged evil icon of our generation. This shift in behavior and the giving into evil is what then made him known as Darth Vader. The Lucifer effect is a theory that can easily be used today. It is a fairly new theory and has been used numerous times in the past decade. The main way we can continue to apply it is with the military, police, and prison guards. An example of how we have used this theory today involves the Abu Ghraib scandal. During the Iraq War, the United States Army and the CIA committed multiple acts of torture and abuse against the prisoners of the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. The Lucifer effect was used to examine those who were accused of committing such abuse. Zimbardo himself actually became involved in the defense team of a guard and had full access to the investigation. He was shocked when he heard the military and government reps were pushing the issue to just a few bad apples, rather than acknowledging the possible system-wide problem they have. If you're going to search this scandal, I warn you, there are very disturbing photos documenting what went on in that prison. Another way we can utilize the Lucifer effect is by examining criminals, specifically the ones who go from seemingly normal lives with no mental illnesses to committing horrid crimes such as serial murder. To receive the best results for this theory, we would need to observe someone who displayed clear behavior transformation due to the steps that induce an evil change and the processes that lead to the disengagement of their morality and their personality. The only scientific scrutiny I've seen related to the Lucifer effect had to do with the ethical issues of the Stanford prison experiment, but nothing about the theory itself. Lastly, I included another quote by Zimbardo. "Evil is knowing better, but willingly doing worse." Thank you.